Welcome to the Sports Investor Podcast, where it's all about smart sports betting. Here is your host, Professor MJ.
Hello sports investors, I hope you are doing great. Today I've got a special episode for you, as this is the first time that I'm having a guest on the show, and this is going to happen more and more often in the future. I'll be talking to people involved in the sports betting industry, like sportsbooks line managers or smart professional gamblers, so that we pick their brains in order to gain some great tips that will contribute to the growth of your bankroll. Yahoo! So episode number 8 of the Sports Investor Podcast features Jason Logan, who is Senior Managing Editor at Covers.com. He provides us with lots of great pieces of information that you should keep in mind, including how to bet NHL totals in the first few weeks of the regular season, the impact of home plate umpires on baseball totals, how to bet NFL totals in windy or snowy conditions, and a system on NBA playoff games that has yielded amazing results over the past several years. So make sure you stay tuned until the end, because it looks like he saved his best secret for last. Without further ado, here is the interview I did with Jason Logan from Covers.com. Enjoy it, guys!
Hi guys, today I'm super stoked to have my very first guest on the Sports Investor Podcast, and I'm even more excited considering it's a guy who has a top job at a major website that provides tons of value to sports bettors around the globe, Covers.com. So my guest is Jason Logan, Managing Editor at Covers.com. Hi Jason, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm honored to be your first guest. Thank you for that big introduction.
Well, you're very welcome. And Jason is constantly publishing informative articles full of great tips related to sports betting. And today I'll do my best to pick his brain so that you guys who are listening to this session will gain some great advice in order to become more savvy sports investors, which is the main objective of this podcast, really. So I want to kick off this interview by thanking personally Jason, not only for accepting to chat with me today, but also for publishing some of my articles on Covers.com a few months ago. So thanks a lot, Jason. I really appreciate what you did.
Hi, very, very welcome. Thank you for the great content.
Oh, you're welcome. So first of all, tell us about your career path and what led you to become Senior Managing Editor at Covers.com.
Well, I started out at Covers. I was about a year out of university. Was contemplating going back, and a friend of mine worked on the development side. He was kind of on the tech side of things, and he had mentioned that they were looking to build out an editorial team. I went in and interviewed for, at the time, what the position was called content editor, and essentially we worked shift work. So we worked 12-hour shifts. We would work 9 in the morning till 9 at night, and then there would be a crew that would come in for 9 at night. We had a 24-hour news crew in there. So you would work like two 12-hour days, and then you would work 2 or 3 12-hour nights, and then you'd have 4 and 5 days off. So as a young man, kind of at a university, this being my first job, real job, it was great. I mean, you were immersed in sports, and then you also had these little brief vacation stints along the way. So it was a great starting job, and from there I got promoted into a full-time writing job covering college basketball and baseball, 2 seasons that just kind of duck-tailed into each other, which is great. So I did that for a while, and then from there I moved on, became an associate editor. Was still writing, but not as much, more coordinating content and doing more administrative stuff. And then we once we kind of have, like any business, you have transition amongst your employees, and eventually I was offered the job to head up our editorial team, the senior managing editor. And now I don't get to do any of the fun stuff. Now I don't get to write too much anymore. I get one NFL column a week, so that's my zen right there. I get to get it all out of me then as a writer. It has been a fun ride, and that's how I really got into it. Yeah.
And what university did you go to?
I was at Dalhousie and King's College.
Okay.
In Halifax, out east. So, Halifax is where the Covers head office is. But right now I'm in Ontario. So.
Okay. And so you were telling me that you went to Las Vegas for week number 1 in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
So what did you do over there, and what did you see that may be of interest to my listeners?
Sure. We have great partnerships with just about every single sportsbook operator in Las Vegas. And one of our strongest partnerships is with MGM Resorts International, and they have like 12 different properties up and down the Las Vegas Strip. The Mirage is their mothership, their home base as far as sports and race. And so we have a partnership with them. We go to the Mirage every big event of the sports betting season, so NFL Week 1, March Madness, Super Bowl, Cinco de Mayo, bowl season, and we hold a big event. So we have
live streaming and interviews.
Yeah, we kind of do everything. We have an event where we showcase the website to people in the sportsbook. It's a great opportunity to meet with sports bettors face on and get some feedback. So there's a lot of people out there that love our site and use our site, and I love to pick their brain and find out how we can make our website better and our products better. We did some live streaming while we were there, so we had our Covers experts guys in Vegas who are professional handicappers picking their brain about NFL betting strategy, college football betting strategy. We talked to the heads of race and sports for MGM Resorts, which is great, and it's an honor to get those guys time, and picking their brains into what went into the lines. And then myself and Patrick we did a pregame show before that week 1 kickoff, touching on everything from action reports, line moves, injury reports, weather, where the sharp money was coming, just basically everything that people need to make an educated wager, and hopefully they win some money.
So let's start with more general tips or advice related to sports betting. So on September 10, you tweeted about something called reverse line moves, which can give insight into sharp action.
Sure.
So for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, a reverse line move is when the vast majority of the public is betting on a certain team, and yet the line moves in the other direction. So, Jason, what's your personal opinion about this betting strategy? How much do you believe in it?
I believe in it because the sports books believe in it. It's not a fictional thing. It's in their numbers. We have consensus on Covers. So if you come to Covers and you look at our scoreboard or you go to our consensus pages, you can see the percentage of bets on particular teams.
That's taken from bets on a specific sports book, or?
It actually all comes through our contest side, and then we also have numbers coming through sports books as well. So from that, you can see the consensus number, and then we also have live odds that update every minute. So you can find out when lines are moving. So basically, you want to weigh those consensus numbers against the line moves, just like you said, and those are the actual numbers. So if the sports books are moving on it, you better believe it, because that's what you have to go off of. That's the odds that you have to bet. There are certain groups and certain bettors out there that sports books they'll respect their particular opinion on a game more than they would just the general public. So if you look, for example, this week, Jacksonville at the New York Jets. This game opened with the Jaguars minus 4.5 coming off that big win in London. According to our Covers consensus, 69% of the bets are on the Jaguars right now. However, this line has gone from Jaguars minus 4.5 to minus 3. So the more respected wagers or the bigger wagers, so while there might not be as many bets on the Jets, those bets might be bigger bets.
Well, that's good, because I just published my weekly article and I picked the Jets. So that's
there you go. Yeah. So it's a great insight into knowing where the sharp money is going. It also too can be it's more of an alert system too, because then you'll want to look, if you're looking to play that game, you can say, okay, well, what am I missing? Am I missing something? If you have an opinion on the Jaguars and you like them in that game, then why are the wise guys, or why are the more informed bettors taking the Jets? And you can do a deeper dive beyond that, and maybe it's a travel issue, maybe it's an injury, maybe it's cluster injuries. Some things that wouldn't normally grab your eye, not a star player, but maybe there's two linemen down, or maybe they have some trouble. Yeah. Maybe they're sitting out in the secondary.
Okay, so and let's talk about the NFL. So I heard a podcast episode where you mentioned that it might be a good idea under certain conditions to bet the over when there's quite a bit of snow on the field, whereas the wind should make one consider taking the under, especially with good passing attacks. So can you elaborate on that, please?
Sure. Well, as we don't see it too much. We're seeing a lot of heat and humidity this time of year, but as we get into the season and as we hit December, we're going to see snowfall have an impact on games, especially when it's a significant amount in a short amount of time. The fields now, they plow them, they're heated. So for the most part, the snow doesn't play a huge factor, but when you have a big dump, there was a few years, it might have been 2003 or 2014, I think it was Lions and Eagles, there was a huge dump of snow, came very quickly, was kept up throughout the game as well. And we saw some big plays. We saw some offense in that game. The knee-jerk reaction is bad weather will permit bad offense. But
most people probably bet the under.
Exactly, yeah. So like I said, it's a bit of a knee-jerk reaction. But if you look at those games in which the field conditions are very slick, and the ball carrier has the advantage. If I'm running towards you and you're a tackler, I know where I'm going. I know which way I'm going to cut. You have no idea. So you've got to adjust to my movement, and adjusting that on a frozen field full of snow is not that easy. So you'll see, especially some shorter passing attacks, some solid running games. They may have an advantage in the snowy weather, just because they have that advantage with footing. They know where they're going. It's pretty much that simple. As it pertains to wind is the worst thing, and in all sports, any outdoor sport. If you look at baseball, wind is a huge, huge factor, especially when betting totals. And in football, too, wind can be pretty destructive. Cross winds, downward winds, if a team's going into the wind. But again, like you had mentioned, teams that have, that rely on maybe deep passing teams like the Saints, if they run into a wind that's blowing into their face or blowing everything off kilter, then they have to change their main plan of attack. So it really depends on the team. If it's a high-powered passing attack, then maybe you want to look to the under, because they have to shorten up their playbook and they're not used to that. If you see wind at 12, 13, 15 miles per hour and up, that's when you want to start looking at what is the makeup of this team and how can the wind ruin it.
And do you have any more NFL betting strategies to share with us? Perhaps related to some factor that may be underestimated by most gamblers?
Well, one thing I kind of alluded to it is cluster injuries. Cluster injuries are really, really big.
Like two or three linemen? Or?
Yeah, kind of losing two or more players at a particular spot or position. You always want to put a value on players. Say when Odell Beckham was out in Week 1 versus the Cowboys. We asked odds makers, how much is he worth? Oh, he could be worth 2 points or 2.5 points. But those numbers are really dictated by where the betting market takes it afterwards. They could adjust 2 points, but then the betting market may say, well, Odell's out, so we're betting against the Giants, and they may run that line move all the way up to 3.5 or 4.
Yeah.
But it's those big names, especially with the popularity of fantasy football, those big names draw a lot of attention. The guys that don't are the guys that are in the trenches, the offensive linemen, the defensive linemen, even guys in the secondary. We saw the Dallas Cowboys in Week 2, they had some injuries in the secondary, got very, very thin. They had some players playing out of position. And then they were playing in the thin air in Denver, so that has an impact on their conditioning and their durability, I guess. And we saw them gas just because they had some cluster injuries there, and it was it was the worst, a perfect storm against their secondary. I would take into account those cluster injuries. Look and see. Does the defense have some missing pieces up front? Okay, how does that match up against? Okay, well, this team has a very good offensive line, or or their secondary is very thin, and it's left them small, and now they're playing against a big receiving core that's quite good. So
it may not be big names that are out.
Exactly. It's not you're not, and that's where you're going to find the value is doing a little digger deep a digger deep into those non-fantasy players, I guess would probably be the best way to explain it. If they're on your fantasy team, the public is watching that. If they're not, there's probably value there to be had.
So let's move on to Major League Baseball. We had a discussion a few months ago where you were telling me how the public underestimates the impact of the home plate umpire when betting totals. So tell us a bit more about that topic, please.
Sure. Well, at Covers, we're one of the few sites out there that we keep betting statistics on specific umpires, so you can find out home and away how teams fare. But the more important stat in that is the over/under for umps, because it is a very subjective sport. Strike zones vary from home plate umpire to home plate umpire. One may have a wider strike zone that benefits a pitcher, and if you have a pitcher that likes to paint the corners of a strike zone and get batters chasing all over the place, then an umpire that has a bigger strike zone is beneficial to that pitcher. However, on the flip side of that, if you have a pitcher that has a tighter strike zone and likes to squeeze the pitcher, makes it harder for them to paint those corners, then what you're going to find is, one, they're throwing a lot of balls, which starts to equate into runners, which starts to equate into runs. But then also, two, they'll start to get frustrated and start leaving some pitches over the plate. Yeah. And then those turn into hits pretty quick. So you definitely want to look at who's umping the game and then match that up against the pitcher.
And you said that on Covers.com. You
can find that right on our MLB page. There's umpire stats, and you can see if they were behind home plate this season, we'll have betting numbers for them. It's really an untapped gem. There's if you talk to any professional gamblers, they'll tell you, like, umpire stats is they'll look at matchups, they'll look at pitching, and then they go right to umpires. And it just makes sense. I mean, this is the guy that dictates every single play of the game.
Well, nice. And do you have more strategies when it comes down to betting on baseball?
Yeah, well, we have a great forum section, a very engaged community, and they love to share their systems and they love to share their strategies. And one system, we try to feature these every few weeks, especially when we find a really good one. And one strategy that we did find, and it was great, and actually a couple of our guys at the office were betting it, and they were making a ton of money off of it. But it is a specific situational spot bet for baseball. So you bet on MLB teams in the second half of the season who are at least 10 games over 500 and beginning a homestand of at least 6 games. So if you have a winning team in the second half of the season, now this is over now, but remember it for next year. Yeah. The second half of the season, at least 10 games over 500, and they're beginning a homestand of at least 6 games. So they're going to have at least the next 2 series at home. And basically, you play this for whatever your unit size is, whether it's $100 or a dime or whatever. You play this for 1 unit win, and then you get out. You're betting on them to get at least 1 win and then get out. So it doesn't matter what their money line side is. If it's the Dodgers at home and they're minus 250, you're still betting on them minus 250 to get a win. And essentially, if they lose the first game, then you chase your losses every time. So you double up your wager. So if you lose $100 on the first bet, then you're betting $200 to win that back and and get your unit profit. And you chase this until you get your win. Now, with these teams, it usually doesn't take too long to get that win at home. However, there is a worst case scenario where they don't win at all during those 6 games, and you're completely depleted. However, like I said, guys at our office were playing this and cleaning up on it. They didn't see too many winning home teams in the second half of the season playing a series of at least 6 games at home, going 2 or 3 games without a win. They were usually picking that win up at least in the first game or the second game. So,
would you be more worried if the baseball team had already clinched their division, for instance, and they may not care that much?
Yeah, so you do see this, and you'll notice too, like some lines will be delayed because they don't know the team. So once a team clinches, there is a bit of relief, there's a bit of a letdown, and then also too, the manager starts saying, okay, well, we have half a week left. How can I rest? I want to make sure my bullpen is good and rested for the playoffs. I want to make sure my top outfielders are rested for the playoffs. If I have guys that are banged up, we don't need to press anymore. We've got that, we've got the wild card locked, or we've got our division pennant locked up. Where can I rest up so that we're at top form come the postseason? And you'll see teams after clinching a division have a bit of a stumble because the pressure is off them right now, and they're not necessarily thinking about playing those final games of the regular season. They're thinking about their first round or wild card opposition. So that's one thing to look for too, is as these teams clinch spots, is going against them in the next few games.
Great. And for all hockey fans listening to this podcast, do you have any tips on how to approach NHL betting? Again, maybe with some specific winning strategies?
Sure. I mean, I'm not a huge hockey fan. I was growing up. I was a big Mario Lemieux fan, and when he retired, I kind of stopped watching hockey. However, I am a Penguins fan, so I was engaged during the playoff last year, and good to see them do as well as they did. I like I said, not a huge hockey bettor, but one thing that has caught my eye over the last few years is unders early into the season. We did some little stats digging there, and the under is actually 318 and 259 in September, October, and that's a 55% under winner going back to the 2013-14 season. You can look at maybe players aren't in full game shape yet. Maybe goaltenders are a bit sharper than the offense at this time of year. You also have a lot of player movement going on in hockey right now, and so those teams need to create some chemistry, and that may kind of delay the offensive efficiency through that opening month of the season, really.
Yeah, so it makes sense. So you said betting the under in September and October.
Betting the under in early kind of the first month. Or so. So it's one of those trends, you're going to want to pay attention to it early on.
Okay. And let's conclude with the NBA. So one phenomenon that we see happening more and more often every year is the resting of star players. So, for example, we've seen the Cavaliers resting its big three, LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Love, at the Clippers on March 18. And 1 week earlier, it was the Golden State Warriors resting three top guys. So obviously, that led to huge line moves. It went from -2 to -13.5 on the Cavs-Clippers game. Now, do you have any advice on how to approach NBA gambling, having this new phenomenon in mind?
Sure. Well, the one advantage we have over the odds makers, one of the rare advantages that we have over the odds makers, is that we can choose which games we want to bet and which ones we don't. They have to put odds up on every single game, and we can choose which ones we want to bet. Now, if there's rumblings, you definitely want to, Covers is a great resource for that. We try to stay on top of that when players are going to be out and get that news out as soon as possible, so you can get your bet in before that big line move. Yeah. But also too, if there are rumblings that LeBron might sit, then you don't have to bet that game. You don't have to take it. However, I think we're going to see less of this season. More so in the Western Conference, because it's going to be so competitive in the West. The Golden State Warriors are still very much the front runners in that conference, but Houston improved. We've seen what Oklahoma City has done. The San Antonio Spurs are still no pushover. Even teams like Minnesota, they added Jimmy Butler, bolstered their backcourt a bit. They have some really great young talent on that team, Wiggins and Karl Anthony Towns, that are coming into form, becoming some of the elite players in the NBA. I don't think you're going to see it as much in the West, because it is going to be a tighter race. In the East, we essentially have Cleveland and Boston. The Raptors might be a third team in the East, but they're still steps behind those two teams. So I think you're going to maybe see that more in the East as those teams separate from the pack. But I know
Cleveland did not seem to care that much to finish first or second. And
you saw that Boston actually finished first in the East last year, had home court advantage for that Eastern Conference final, but it didn't matter. Yeah. I always like to kind of be contrarian in those instances and say, okay, well, if LeBron's not playing, then maybe these other guys know that they've got to pick it up tonight. We always see this with the San Antonio Spurs. The San Antonio Spurs would, at least when Tim Duncan was still there, and Ginobili and Parker, they would have some nights where they would just completely rest that their old big three, and the line would shift dramatically, and their bench players would come out and play their butts off and not only win but cover that spread.
And do you have any more tips pertaining to NBA betting?
Sure. Yeah, one that was just fantastic for the playoffs. So you're going to have to wait a little bit to use this one. Basically, teams that fall behind 0-2 in a series, you play their first half line in Game 3. So if they're behind 0-2 and they're going home, or they've lost 2 at home and they're going away, you play their first half spread.
They'll be desperate.
And that's the whole kind of science behind it, is that, we're down 0-2, they're going to come out with a bunch of pep, their backs are against the wall, so we're at least for that first half, they're going to give a really good effort. And this has been a very, very profitable system or spot bet to go off of. So last year it went 9-3 ATS in the NBA playoffs. It petered off a bit at the end of the conference finals. In the NBA finals, we actually saw an opportunity for it there. It was 9-0 to start, and then in the conference finals, it went in the conference finals and the NBA finals, it was 0-3. So anyone that kind of jumped out and won that one late. But in the last 2 years prior, so 2016, 2015, it was 19-0.
What?
Against
19-0?
19-0 against the first half spread in those Game 3s. And it was 10-0. It was 10-0 during the 2016 playoffs. And if you go back to 2007, it was 64-31-1, which is 67%.
That's amazing.
For the first half Game 3 spread after losing the opening 2 games of a series.
Wow. Or I suppose you could also bet the first quarter, probably.
Yeah, I mean, most places will offer those lines. It depends on your sportsbook if they want to offer the first quarter line or the halftime line. But we just went off the halftime line, and that was a bit of a golden goose right there as far as NBA. Yeah, it's a great trend. I know it was one of these ones that in my 13, 14 years of diving into these sports betting stats, it's one of the more impressive trends that I've seen. As far as
those
return,
are amazing numbers.
Yeah. As far as return, and then also too, I mean, it makes sense. It's not like one of these weird trends where it's like, the Saints are great on Monday nights. Okay, well, why are the Saints great on Monday nights? Like, why? There's no real reason behind it. But this one particular trend, I mean, you said it right away the second you heard it. You knew why this was a good trend. So,
yeah, like I picked the Skins last week, and some guy was telling me that on prime time television games, they had a really bad record over the past 10 years, but I mean, the players have changed so much over the last 10 years.
Yeah, I think that was, and I think it was funny. That was one of the, we did our live stream Sunday morning, and that was the one I said, this is like the Fade the Public game. It seems everyone really likes the Raiders in this game, but any kind of informed bettor really likes Washington, and Washington kind of gets a bum rap. And if you kind of look at their ATS numbers over the last, I'll have to pull them up now because they've actually had a quite impressive ATS record over the last few games, simply because they're a team that is constantly undervalued. So they're 10-2 ATS in their last 12 road games, and they're going to Kansas City this week. This is the Washington Redskins. So 10-2 ATS in the last 12 road games, and 12-5 ATS in their last 17 games overall.
Do you know why they would be undervalued? Or?
I think one, they play in a division that does have some kind of public darlings to it. I mean, you have the Dallas Cowboys.
The Giants.
That's everyone's team. You have the Giants, who are a very, very popular team. And then also too, this is a team, or this is a division too that's been very hard to read over the last few years. Just 2 years ago, the Redskins won this division, and then you had a team like Dallas finish at the very bottom, and then the very next year they flip flop. And so it's a very tight division. It's tough to kind of get a handle on these teams when you just look at those win-loss standings. You kind of have to look beyond that, look at their losses, look at their wins, how close were they. And that's kind of where you find the value. I think Washington is just one of those franchises that may kind of have a stigma about it. You've got to look beyond win-loss record. Win-loss record is what, that's the first thing that everyone's eyes go to. So you've got to go deeper into that. You've got to look at, okay, well, how did they lose these games? If a quarterback threw a bunch of interceptions in his last game, okay, we'll take a look at those interceptions. Were they just bad throws, or were they throws that hit a receiver in the hand, popped up in the air, and got picked off? Or were they just a chuck at the end of a game? You look at Deshaun Watson last week. He had 2 interceptions against the Pats. He played a great game, but one of those interceptions came at the very end of the game on a Hail Mary, just a prayer trying to steal a win. So, I wouldn't kind of ding him for that one. So,
or sometimes you lose because of a fumble, which is pretty much unpredictable. So.
Yeah. So it's, you've got to do a little more digging beyond the win-loss records and even beyond the ATS record.
Okay, well, thanks. So I've been a user of Covers.com for a very, very long time, so you don't need to convince me about how great this website is. But can you tell my listeners about everything the site has to offer to sports investors? Like, why should they check out that site, and how will it help them grow their bankroll?
Yeah, sure. Well, the number one reason to go visit Covers.com is it's free. It's all free. 99.9% of the data and information that we're going to provide you is free. You can come into the website. It's all there. Editorial content, it's not behind a paywall. There's no subscriptions or anything like that. It's free. And our contest side is free, too, so you can win up to $100,000 playing free sports betting contests, which is great. There is an e-commerce side of the site, which covers experts. There's some really sharp handicappers there, and if you need help with making your picks, then those guys are there, and you can buy their information. But for the most part, it's all free. We have the biggest sports betting databases in the industry. We've been around for 20-plus years. Our databases I think our NFL database goes back to 1985. I head up the editorial team, so not only do we have great insights from our writers, we get exclusive information from sports books in Las Vegas and online. We have great relationships there that, we'll tell you where the lines are going to move before they move, where they say they're going to move, where the action is, the percentage of bets, the percentage of money. And then we do some great video content as well, too. We have Patrick Everson in Las Vegas. We do shoots from inside the biggest sports books in Las Vegas. We're at MGM Properties. We're at the Cosmopolitan Sportsbook. We're at the Wynn Las Vegas. We're at the Westgate Superbook. And we're pretty much up and down the strip all week. Getting insight from that other side of the counter, too, so giving you some exclusive insight into the odds-making process and where the action is coming there.
I also like your forum section. I often post there, and like you said, some people will present some potential strategies.
Yep. Yeah, we have a great Covers community of very, very savvy and very informed sports bettors that love to share their picks. They love to share their opinion. You can jump in there and find some great conversations and find some great info as well, too. And then we're doing a live stream on Sunday mornings, pregame show as well, too, where we really gather all the best information from Covers, from the website, and present it in a 20-minute, half-an-hour show to get all that information out so that you can make those last-minute wagers on NFL Sundays. So we are really a one-stop shop for anything sports betting, really.
Yeah, well, I totally agree. And so we've been very generous with your time and also by sharing some great pieces of advice. So thanks a lot, Jason. It was really nice talking to you.
No, you're very welcome. I appreciate it. And great being on the podcast.
Thanks, and keep up your good work, and we'll be reading you on Covers.com for sure.
Okay.
Thanks again, and we'll stay in touch.
All right, thanks.
All right. I hope you enjoyed this interview with Jason Logan from Covers.com. If you haven't done so already, I invite you to join my Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/ProfessorMJ, or to join my mailing list, which can be done from the homepage of my website at professormj.com. That will allow you to receive my picks in the NFL, the NHL and the NBA. You will also get articles I write about specific betting strategies, or you may play some free prediction contests where you can win cash or prizes. Come and join my fun community of sports investors. Thanks a lot for listening to episode number 8 of the Sports Investor Podcast. This is Professor MJ from Quebec City in Canada saying so long.